Good morning. My name is Dr. Hellena. I'm the Director of Degrees, Teacher Training Programmes and Senior Research Fellow at the London School of Jewish Studies. This morning, I'm going to talk to you about a research project that I've been involved in since 2011. This is a longitudinal study. It's called Jewish Lives, and it's a long look at the unfolding stories of many hundreds of Jewish children who started Jewish secondary schools in the UK in 2011. And we've been investigating how these young people and their families have been navigating school, university, their social lives, and their relationships to being a young Jew in the UK and their relationship to Israel. Our cohort is now 23 years old. They've grown up in complex, exciting, and very challenging times. So in the next few minutes, I'm just going to give you a really brief snapshot of the huge amount of data that we've collected in the last 10 years and talk to you a little bit more about the project. We have found key outcomes of interest in the following areas. We found an awful lot out about the Jewish behaviours of our young people and their families, their Jewish attitudes, what it's like to be a young Jew growing up in the UK, what our families and young people's relationship to Israel has been and has changed over the years. We have found out about how change happens over time in a family's lifespan. We found out what the Jewish schools do well, how they could improve, how reality of Jewish schooling in the UK meets expectations, and also a lot about life after school in the last few years. So I'm going to talk to you in the next few minutes, firstly about choosing a Jewish school in the first place, secondly, what schools do well and what challenges they face, what it's like once you've left school in terms of thinking about your Jewish schooling that you've had, how young people have approached being a young Jew in the UK, something about friendships, dating, and going forward with partnerships, and finishing up just telling you what's next in this project. So first of all, choosing a Jewish school. In the UK, you don't have to pay to go to a Jewish school. They're state-funded schools. And we asked the first cohort what reasons they have for choosing a Jewish secondary school in the first place when their children were coming up to 11 years old. The most important reason that people choose to send their children to a Jewish school is because Jewish schools provide their children with a stepping stone to the next academic stage, in other words, university. So people are choosing Jewish schools because they're good schools, not because they're Jewish schools. They do want their children to have a foundation of Jewish knowledge, and they do want their children to have friendships with other Jewish people. So the social is very important. Having an intensive Jewish education is very low on people's lists of priorities. Even lower than that is the fact that Hebrew acquisition is very, very low on people's priorities. Okay, so what do schools do well? So the Jewish schools in the UK, one of the things they do really, really well is to promote a strong sense of Jewish identity linked back to the school, but also to the youth movement and to their peers. And our families and our young people are able to cite many, many examples of how their schools contribute strongly to their Jewish identity. Jewish schools also provide, as I've said before, a strong academic and social preparation for the next stage of life. The friends that these young people have made in their Jewish schools always make up the majority of their closest friends at the next stage of their life, at university or in the world of work. And that means that for those people who went to a non-Jewish school, they have a much less Jewish social network than those who went to a Jewish school. The Jewish secondary school graduates serve in far higher proportions as the youth movement leaders and get far more engaged in Jewish life outside of a formal education network than their peers who went to non-Jewish schools. What do schools find challenging? The majority of families who send their children to Jewish schools have different expectations than the schools do in terms of the Jewish education that they are providing. And that can lead to tension and can lead to dissonance between the families whose children are going to the schools and what the school is trying to offer in terms of Jewish education. Another challenge has been in the last 2 years of school, between ages 16 and 18, when young people in the UK have to specialise and choose 3 or 4 subjects to study only. Those who are academically less gifted are often then prevented from entering those last 2 years of school and have to find other alternative provision, which is not Jewish provision, to do more vocational subjects. Another challenge our schools face is the challenge of funding. In terms of Jewish education, every school in the UK asks parents to pay a voluntary contribution to boost the amount of money available for Jewish education, because that does not come from the government. And the majority of parents do not pay the full amount, which means that every school has insufficient funding. Another challenge that schools face is in the realm of teacher recruitment and retention, which is at an all-time low in the UK, and that's reflected as well in Jewish schools. However, when parents and children are asked after they've left school, is it worthwhile attending a Jewish school for 7 years? Overwhelmingly, families say yes. That's both the parents and the young people. So the Jewish school experience has been a very positive one. So one example of how our young people relate to the UK. We asked in 2017, do you intend to vote next time the elections, national elections come around? And 90% of our young people had intended to vote. That's 20% more than the national average, which is only at 70%. We then asked them 3 years later, did you vote in the last general election in the UK? And we had 83% who had actually got out of bed that day, age 19 or whatever they were, and voted in a general election. But it does show that young people, young Jewish people in the UK are interested enough in what's going on in the country and going on in their local area to be interested enough to vote. We asked in the last data collection set about friendships, dating, and what their ideas are about marriage. We found that those who attended Jewish schools have particularly robust networks, social networks of Jewish friends, and those from religious homes would all prefer Jewish partners. Those from less religious homes would consider a non-Jewish partner. But those who attended Jewish schools are much more likely to be dating Jewish people and interested in marrying Jewish people. Our study participants want their homes to be in Jewish terms, very much like the ones they were raised in. And whether they have said they will marry or not, the majority want their children to grow up in some kind of a Jewish framework, which is interesting and very different from the generation that preceded them, where there was a much stronger sense that if you wanted a Jewish home, you would need a Jewish partner. What's next for this project? We'd love to carry on this project so long as we have sufficient funding for as long as possible. My view is that we won't know the Jewish outcomes of our young people's lives until they are making decisions for their own children. And that could be in another 10 or 15 years. Thank you.